how's it going? This is Anthony back, and for this review I want to look at the SH Figuarts Dragon Ball Z Piccolo figure. Probably one of my favorite in the batch of Dragon Ball Z figures. He's technically the tallest if you don't count the Super Saiyan 3 Goku's hair, so he's definitely a good sized figure. He comes in at 6.5 inches tall just about, so you could easily work him into any 6-inch figure display, anything like that. Great figure. He doesn't have the shading that some of the other figures have, which is fine by me. He's got all the right detail work where it's supposed to be, but other than that, he doesn't have the shading. So, but like I said, that's fine. He does have the shading on his cape, which we might as well look at right now. He does have some good accessories, first of which is this cape. Solid piece. This part is anyway, and if you'll notice it has 2 pegs here, and what that's for is you can peg this piece in for when he doesn't have his arms crossed. It's kind of tricky to peg in. It's really tight, but which is a good thing, I suppose. Well, you get the idea either way. That pegs in there so that when he doesn't have his arms crossed it looks normal, and then when he does have his arms crossed, this piece pegs in, which is just the same thing but trimmed out a little bit. So that goes there, and then the arms go like that over top of them. So we might as well show you the arms now and the cape. These arms pop off relatively easily. Still use some caution when you're doing it, just in case you don't want to break anything. And the tricky part is actually getting the new ones on, since it's one solid sculpted piece. It's a little tricky. Let's see if I can do it on camera here. Obviously getting the first one snapped in isn't so bad, but then getting the other one in is a little bit of a hassle. Getting everything to line up just right. And sometimes you'll think it's in, but if you look it's actually not, so make sure you get it to line up just right. That's good enough for the sake of the review. You get the idea. But as I said, it is tricky, so take the time to get that right if you're going to do it. This just pops down over top of everything else, just like that. So then you can pop the head on, and he's wearing his cape. The good thing about that is they also gave him one of his alternate heads has the turban, so it's a really nice display piece. Looks just like he does in the show, so it's very cool. While we're talking about alternate heads, as you saw, he has the plain standard head, the turban head, which I dropped, which looks really cool, and then he has the angry one with the veins, which is my favorite. The one thing I don't really care for on the Piccolo figure is overall he just looks a little less mean and powerful than he does in the show. I think the problem is the head. It's a little bit too rounded, not quite angular enough. That's why I think the angry one is probably the best. But either way, it's still a solid figure. I'm not really complaining, just something that I noticed. Get the arms back on, and then we'll go on with the review. So those are all the parts for his head and his cape and all that kind of stuff. Let's look at the parts for his hands, the extra interchangeable hands. He's got the two fist hands, as you can see on the figure right now. 1, 2. He's got one of these hands, which is for when he touches it to his forehead. Little vein sculpt work on there, painted fingernails. 2 of the fully opened hands. Nothing too special, nothing to point out there. And then 2 of the semi-open hands. So, full range of hands, plenty of posing options. As far as the paintwork goes, like I said, there's no shading, but they did paint the detail lines in there for whatever you call those yellow spots. And the sculpt work is phenomenal. The way they got the texture in there for the arms just looks really good. Excuse me. As far as articulation goes, he's pretty much the exact same as Goku. He's got the ball disc head, so full range of motion there. The neck is posable, so that gives you even more posing options. So great range of articulation. You can't really have more in a head/neck than that, so that's awesome if you ask me. It's got a moving ball peg in there with that green sleeve over it, so that kind of hides the joint a little bit, so the shoulder moves all the way around like that. And then it has the disc also, so great range of motion. The sleeve is posable to hide the joint. No matter how you want to pose the figure, you can make it look at least a little bit better with the sleeve. Obviously, if you put it all the way forward, you're going to have a little bit of a gap there, but it still works pretty well, so I like that. Swivel at the bicep, double jointed elbows, so almost as far as you would ever need it to go. I guess it could be a little bit better, but I mean, there's an arm there, so it has to stop somewhere. Ball disc wrists, so they swivel, and then of course, just like the neck, that pivots like that, and it also rotates around. So great range of motion there. The hands swap out easily. Double ball peg torso, which does expand to increase the range of motion, and the sash belt thingy hides the articulation perfectly well. Of course, if you look at the very back, you could see a gap, or at the very front if you really wanted to, but it works very well. It also, you can give them some height. The guys with the belts, you can hide that because of the belt. Personally, I think it looks weird, so I would leave them tucked down, but that's up to you. The legs have the added piece of articulation that lets the leg drop so that you can increase the range of motion a little bit. So that's just a ball peg that's on a hinge. It moves like that, and then of course the leg moves around on the ball socket, and the thigh can swivel around on top of that as well. So great range of motion for the legs. The knees are double jointed. They're kind of ugly from the front, but personally I don't mind them. I think they look just fine. Of course the new ones are better, the ones that Trunks has, but these are still perfectly good. Sculpt work on the pants is unique and nicely done. He's got a double ball peg for the ankle. The peg's right there and it moves around inside. Or does his not move? I don't know if it moves or not. I'm pretty sure it does, technically. Not a whole lot of motion on the peg, but it is a ball peg, so that's fine. It's not the best range of motion for a foot, but it's enough. And he has the toe joint, so great articulation, great sculpt, great paintwork, huge amount of accessories. Just really can't go wrong with this figure. It's a great looking figure, and I highly, highly, highly recommend it. Like I said, it's one of my favorites from the Figuarts line. So there he is. There's Piccolo. Stay tuned for the rest of the Dragon Ball reviews, and in the meantime, keep collecting.